Well, first of all, thank you guys for coming. As Margaret said, I lived in South America more than half my life. I'm originally from New York City. I lived here in Syracuse until I was a teenager, and in my early 20s, I went to South America. Now, as the world globalizes, probably all of you guys, Americans and foreigners alike, are going to find yourselves out of your home country in a foreign context. So, in my opinion, these lessons apply to anybody who's going to be out of their home country in a foreign context for a period of years. Now, all of you guys have lived abroad, but when 2 years turns into 5, and 5 turns into 10, and 10 turns into 15, it's a little bit of a different dynamic. And in my opinion, there are 3 key skills that will help you if you want to make it in the foreign context. Reaching out to people and learning from them, number 1. These are things that help me. I mean, I blew it tons of times, so it's mainly trial and error in my case. Leveraging your own cultural assets, the things that you have about your culture and your person that are powerful. And building trust-based networks across various sectors. This could be the army, could be the church, could be the Ministry of Labor, any type of organization that has anything to do with what you want to do, reach out to them and build a network with them. So, my foreign experience begins in Jamaica, where you see the arrow pointing. When I was a teenager, just out of high school, my sister and I went to Jamaica. We went off the beaten path into the far countryside. There I was kind of shocked to discover there's a whole world outside of America very different than ourselves. I thought everybody had McDonald's and cars and stuff, and no, I mean, when I went to Jamaica, I got to far places in the backwoods where people didn't understand my English, even though it's an English-speaking country, and this was very interesting for me. So after that, as an undergrad, I was a foreign exchange student in Puerto Rico, the green country you see on the far right, then to Dominican Republic. I was a foreign exchange student there as well. Later, with SUNY Buffalo, I went to Costa Rica, and I did a semester there as well. After these studies, I went to Colombia, to Bogota. You see it here on the map in the center of the green country down there. There I studied for 2 years. I studied mainly regional studies, literature, linguistics, history, things that were interesting for me. So, after that, I wanted to kind of get out of school and I wanted to begin my professional life in South America. Now, I love the Latin culture. It really appeals to me quite a bit, so I kind of fell in love with the place. Now, not only did I learn about this region, but I learned about Americans, people like me. Just seeing myself in the foreign context taught me an awful lot about Americans. Also, I saw other Americans in the same foreign context, and I learned about them too. Now, what do we like? How many Americans are here? There's Mark, myself, there's a few other Americans. Now, do we have a distinctive culture? Or are we just a blank piece of paper, you know? Do we have a culture? No. I insist we do have a culture. Okay, now, there's this famous book, I think 1958, called The Ugly American. Believe it or not, the ugly American in this novel is a very good man. He's not a bad guy. But the title of the book has come to be an epithet for a certain type of American that you can see all over the world. I mean, my kids, when they're mad at me, they call me the ugly American. I have 2 Chilean kids. But the point is, we don't have to be ugly. So, I would like to ask you guys, what are some of our assets? What are some of the good things about Americans? Or isn't there anything? Tell me, what's good about us? Diligent, hardworking.
Very visionary.
Yeah, visionary. Probably we're inventive, we're creative. We take a lot of initiative. We're not easily intimidated. I mean, there are good things about us. We tend to be interested in social issues and doing good things. I mean, there's good things too. Not that everybody shares these things, but there are some good cultural characteristics about us Americans. Now, when you see Americans abroad, you see all types, both good and bad. And like we just said, there are some of these things that you said that are very good. Now, what about the bad side? How about loud, culturally insensitive? And one that I want to talk about is socially isolated. It's very common that Americans make the mistake in the foreign context of socially isolating themselves. Should not do that, but it commonly happens. I want to talk about Mr. Doug Tompkins, the owner of Spree Clothing Company. Multi-millionaire. He sold his company, he went to Chile, and he bought 3 million acres of land. He bought a piece of land so big it stretches from the border of Argentina to the Pacific Ocean, effectively dissecting the country. Now, he's probably a great guy. He's an ecologist, he believes in deep ecology, he wants to protect the sea lions, he wants to protect the forest. I like all those things too. But what is his style? His style has been very confrontational. He's hated in Chile. From the far right to the far left to the center, he does not have any friends. For example, he offered a 100,000 peso bounty for anybody who reports the killing of sea lions. Now, we have tons of sea lions in Chile. They're more common than squirrels in Syracuse. They eat fish. This is the Chilean fisherman. Chile has more than 3,000 miles of coast. Basically, it's a long strip of coast next to the mountains. That's what Chile is. A fisherman is barely a middle-class guy. He struggles to survive. And these guys detest Mr. Tompkins, of course. If he's threatening, I'm going to throw you guys in jail if I catch you shooting sea lions. They do. They go out with hunting rifles and bam, they pick them off because the sea lions are competing for a scarce resource. Now, why doesn't Mr. Tompkins instead help the fishermen sell value-added products for a higher price? Perhaps he could help the fishermen access better markets. There's other ways to solve the problem than just being confrontational and threatening. Here's some of the backlash. These are the things that are published in Chile. It says, Patagonia without Tompkins. Private property, don't go through here. Because like I said, he owns a whole strip of land that cuts the country in two. This is a magazine, La Nación. It's one of the major newspapers in there. It says, gringo en aprietos, a foreign guy in trouble. So this is an ugly American. I decided I don't want to be that way. I want something different for myself. So I decided to move to Chile, and this is where I started my professional career. I started off teaching English. I worked for various institutes. After working as institutes, I went off and I started working on my own. I did very well. I worked in banks. I had clients in government ministries, law firms, stuff like that. I did very well. There's a famous book called How to Survive in the Chilean Jungle. This is co-authored with an American and a Chilean. It's mainly stories of failure. Now, guys who go to Chile and they try to buy a farm and they fall flat on their face and they go bankrupt, there's dozens of them. It's very, very common that Americans go to Chile and they fail. I mean, it's like California. It's a beautiful climate. You can go skiing and windsurfing on the same weekend because, from downtown Santiago, the ski slopes are 1 hour away. It's very, very beautiful. But actually, to survive there, you have to learn to network. You have to learn to build relationships. You have to learn to have a peer relationship with people. So this is downtown Santiago. As you see, it's right smack next to the Andes Mountains. As I said, from downtown Santiago to very good ski slopes, it's 1 hour by car. And then if you want to go to the ocean, it's about also an hour and a half in the other direction. So very ideally located, a very nice place to live. Finally, I decided to make my own institute. Actually, the paperwork was pretty simple. I had a lot of clients who were attorneys, and they helped me with the paperwork. I had to have bylaws. I had to do a declaration and legal notices. I had to declare my capital. I had to build my trademark. Now, if you look at any government agency, almost all of them have some variation of the Great Seal. There's a whole book called The Great Seal. What I did is I took out the arrows and the leaves, and I changed the colors. And this was basically the basis of my trademark. Okay, like I said, these are the basic things that you have to do to have a company in almost any part of the world. I had a web page, and I had what's called a domain. I had the .cl domain, North American English. This was mine. So later, I wanted to buy a property for my institute. And I learned that the city had drawn a square here, and they said, we want this to be the university area. So I found out that anybody who wanted to do anything like college-like studies, they would approve the permit very easily if you were in there. I am right here by this little letter A, just barely inside this square. And I bought a big 2,300 square foot apartment with 6 to 8 rooms that I could convert into classrooms, 3 bathrooms, so I could have staff bathroom, men's, women's. And it was dirt cheap. It was really, really cheap. But like I said, it was in a bad neighborhood. My friends said, Republic, you guys are buying a Republica? And I said, yeah, it's a good deal. It had a bad reputation. So back to the Americanness. I wasn't really affected by local prejudices. And I thought, well, I'm going to give this place a try, even though it really does have kind of a bad reputation. The long blue air is exactly where I was. And so this little L strip here, it was full of cars, and it was actually kind of dangerous. These guys would hide between the cars, and they would steal women's purses. It was a little bit dangerous. This is the front of the building that I got. It's a 100-year-old building, very beautiful. This is the actual street after some work that I did that I will tell you about. So, what happened? After I was there for a while, I was plugging along pretty good with my institute. And one day I was sitting down at my desk doing paperwork. And I have a diesel van. It's a Toyota, what's it called? A High Ace. It's a van with dark windows, but the engine is diesel. And I hear something, and I thought, my God, that sounds an awful lot like my car. And I look out the window. I'm on the 3rd floor, and I see my car is pulling out. And I thought, did I lend my car to somebody today? No, somebody's stealing my car. And I thought, my God. Now, I saved in pinch pennies for 2 years to buy that car. I bought it cash. And I thought, I can't just sit here and do nothing and let somebody steal my car, man. So I bolted down the stairs, 3 flights of stairs. When I hit the street, my car was still visible. It was turning the corner. And I'm running behind it. And I thought, what the hell am I going to do? I didn't know, but I thought, I can't do nothing. I can't just sit back and let myself be robbed passively. And if blood could boil, mine was boiling. Then my car turned on Alameda Street, which is an 8-lane road that's full of traffic, heavy traffic. This is 11 o'clock in the morning, broad daylight. And I see my car, and I'm running down the street, and I see a taxi next to me. I open the front door, and I jump into the taxi, and I said, follow that car, that guy stole my car. And I was hysterical. And I told the taxi driver, block my car, get in front of it so he can't escape. And the taxi driver said, calm down. No, not a good idea. And I said, well, what? What do we do? And he said, look, let's just follow the car. And when there's a red light, just, we'll pull up, roll down the window, and tell the guys to get out of the car. Now, in my panic, I bolted out of my house without my cell phone. I mean, I could have dialed 133, which is the equivalent of R911, and, we could have just had the cops catch him, but I didn't have a cell phone. And I was in such a panic, I forgot to ask the taxi driver if he had a cell phone. When you're kind of like freaked out, you don't think of things. But the point is, my car turned on Avenida Brazil. We pulled up next to the car. I rolled down my window, and I said, bájense del auto. I said, get out of the car. And the guy at the wheel of my car, he looked at me kind of stunned, and he said, ningún problema. He said, no problem. And he had a tool like this that he had used to force the ignition on the car, got out of the car, and he calmly walked away. He was kind of a fat guy, black leather jacket, 40-ish, not a kid. There were 2 of them. All that to say, they were probably professional thieves. They didn't panic. They walked away. And Alameda is so full of cars and buses, like there's 20 buses, so they just jumped on a bus and vanished. Now, later the police said, good thing you didn't block the guys who robbed you, because probably if you had done that, they could have shot, because they could have gotten scared and then, you could be dead. So what happened? 2 things combined. I guess my Americanness to not want to just take this laying down, and also the local culture. The taxi driver was like an angel from heaven. He knew something I didn't know, and the combination of the 2 of us, we got the car back. And finally, I didn't get killed, and I didn't lose my car. So, a lesson about learning from the local culture. Okay, so later on, as my institute is working, one of the first brick walls I smacked into was I wanted to get tax-deductible status for my courses. So, if I can go to any company, a bank, whatever, and say, hey guys, buy courses for me for 50 students, and it will cost you nothing. It'll be free, because you can deduct it from your taxes. That's pretty good, right? I submitted my taxes to the Ministry of Labor 17 times to get them approved, and they were rejected. And I was, at wit's end. I went to a seminar given by the Ministry of Labor that teaches you how to, make your courses so that the Ministry of Labor will approve them. Most courses that they approve have nothing to do with English. It's usually auto mechanics, welding, it's like industrial type things. And so finally, my Chilean wife, I married a Chilean, had the bright idea. She said, let's invite one of these guys over for dinner. So we invited a guy over to our house, had dinner with him, had a few drinks, and, his name was Juan Bravo, and I said, Juan, what's the deal? How come my courses are always rejected? He said, okay, well, let's take a look. And he sat down with me. We went over my courses with a fine-tooth comb, and he showed me how to fix them so they would be approved. So after that, my courses were approved, and that was life-changing for me. I mean, I started doing a lot better after that, of course, because it makes it a lot easier to sell the courses. But I could not have done that on my own. And I could not have done that through regular channels. There's something that we learned here from Catherine Girard called discretionary effort. Discretionary effort is something that you cultivate by reaching out and building a personal rapport with people. I insist that's absolutely essential to success and survival in Latin America. Okay, so let me continue here. My street was dark. You could hardly see your hand in front of your face. There was a zillion people walking by all the time. And I got the signatures for the for my neighbors to rezone our street as a pedestrian thoroughfare and to put lights in. I found this guy on the internet. He just happens to be there. But this was the guy who met with me. His name is Pelayo Covarrubias. He was the mayor's representative for the university neighborhood. So I got our neighbors together. We had a little meeting in my particular institute, and he came. And we had these meetings talking about, are we going to rezone the street or not, and is it a good idea or not? Most people agreed. Now, on my little L-shaped street, there was a guy who owned a radio station who did not agree. He said, the students pee on the ground, they get drunk, I don't want any more students here in this neighborhood. And he opposed rigorously. And usually the guys who agree, they don't say anything. So we'd have a meeting of 40 people, and this guy would be ranting and raving, and everybody else would be quiet. But I knew they agreed. So I stood up to him. And I said, hey, most people agree. And he goes, what the hell do you know, you stupid gringo? And he started insulting me. And finally, it came to the point, he said he was going to smack me one. Te voy a pagar un combo. He threatened to hit me. And I said, go ahead, hit me. Smack me one, and I'll call 153, and I'll put you in jail. I'm a foreign guy. I could do that because I had backing. For example, when that happened, one of the guys, we're 6 owners in my building. One of the owners in my little building, Gonzalo, he also stood up and he said, if you go against Bruce, you go against all of us. So I engage these guys as a peer, not as something else, not as an outsider. And finally, the happy end of the story with, this guy, Pelayo Covarrubias, the thing was approved. The city spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. They ripped up our street completely. They resurfaced it with this very nice surface that's for pedestrians, and they put in these very same streetlights that I showed you a minute ago. These streetlights here, they made this old-style streetlight, which kind of jives with our buildings, because all of our buildings are very, very old. This fellow you see with the red tie, Mr. Zaraket, he's the former mayor. He's not the mayor anymore. And my place is, just 10 steps down, it's on the opposite side. So all that to say, my little effort to collect signatures and get something done through the city worked, and it turned out to be a success in the long run. Okay, so as time went on, things were booming with my institute. I had my Chilean wife, I had 2 kids. I bought a piece of land in the far south in a place called Pucón. This is about 10 hours south of Santiago, and I bought 12,000 square meters, which is approximately the size of 2 football fields. And I bought this land very, very cheaply, and I built the house you see right there. I designed it myself with an architect. This is my, what's it called? This is my, terrace. This is the river. This is pointing to a kayak who's paddling by. This is me, my ex-wife, and my darling daughter. We made a table out of a whole slab of a tree cut here. So, and in that river, there's, salmon and trout. It's really a pretty cool place. So, one day, my wife and kids went there in the wintertime, and they gave me a call, and they said, Bruce, the house has been robbed. Somebody had, they had kicked the glass sliding doors in, and they pulled up a truck, and they emptied my house. They took the dining room table, the cast iron wood-burning stove, they emptied my damn house. I mean, my God, I thought, what the hell am I going to do? Now, there's nobody to see my house. You cannot see anybody in any direction. It's absolutely isolated. From Pucón Center, it's like a half-an-hour drive. It's out in the boonies. It's really, really a remote place. And so I thought, I'm totally unprotected, And I went to the police, and they were not helpful at all. I went to several different police stations, not helpful at all. They said, well, you got to go to the district attorney, to the courthouse. I went to the district attorney, and without exaggerating, they almost spit in my face. They were openly hostile with me. How do you know your house got robbed? What? I mean, the glass is broken, the stuff is gone. Oh, did you see them do it? I mean, they talked to me like that. And so I thought, what the hell am I going to do? I mean, it was very discouraging. I thought, thousands of dollars down the drain because my house is a sitting duck. It's just going to get robbed again. In fact, it did get robbed twice, and I just kind of felt at wit's end. Now, what do? I didn't really have a solution. And something happened almost by accident. Among my clients, I have, for example, the legal department of a bank. And one of my students, Ignacio Errázuriz, is the legal manager for a bank. And I was just kind of talking with him one day, and I mentioned the robbery of my house. And I thought, what does a bank have to do with the legal system in the police? Nothing. They're 2 different types of institutions, nothing to do one with the other. But this guy, he called the DA, he called the district attorney, and suddenly they took interest in my case. Very short, simple little phone call. And then they started calling me. And they said, oh, Bruce, look, we're on the trail of the guys who robbed you. And they were calling me like once a week saying, we're going to catch these guys. And actually what they did is they had undercover policemen disguise themselves as thieves to integrate themselves into a band of thieves to figure which one was the guy who robbed that house out there. And so they found the person who did it, and then the judge signed a search and seizure order, and they got all my stuff back. So they called me, they said, Don Bruce, come and, get your stuff, and you're going to have to get a big truck, because there's a lot of stuff. And without exaggerating, it was like, like this, the whole corner of this room full of stuff. And so, wow, that was just a shocking and very happy result for me. So I went there. And I do save my receipts for tax purposes. I had photocopies of all my receipts. They were quite surprised about that, but they weren't too particular about it either. Now, of all that stuff that was there, I took only the stuff that was mine. I could have taken everything. There was shotguns. There was all kinds of cool stuff I could have taken that was not mine. I exactly took only my own stuff. And they wouldn't have said anything if I took it all, but they saw that I was an honest guy because it was like, it's like 20% of the stuff I didn't touch. I said, only my stuff, and I'm not going to take anything else, and that stuff is not mine, so whatever you want to do with it, fine. And so that helped me build rapport with the cops. They know I'm a decent guy, I'm an honest guy, and that is something that they'll remember forever. And they're always going to be in my neighborhood. My house is there. From that point on, I never had a problem with my house getting robbed again. And in the whole valley where I live, everybody is very, very nice to me. So as I was leaving, I shipped my stuff. I'm done with the cops. I'm done with everything. One of the policemen said, oh, by the way, when we were chasing the guys who robbed you, a stone, busted one of the windows of one of our patrol cars. I bought them the window. I didn't even ask. I just bought them the darn window. It wasn't bribery. They weren't asking me for something in exchange for something else. But this is something what a Chilean would do. Of course I'd do that. My God, these guys help me. And the police aren't rich in Chile. They're kind of poor. So for me to buy a busted window for their Toyota Hilux, it's easy to do. And that's the type of thing that is culture learning that I realized. You need to be, in Spanish you say atento. You got to be nice to the people who you have immediate dealings with. And maybe it means doing things like buying them a broken window or something like that. That's a good thing to do. So for me, that was an important cultural learning. So these guys are part of my network. The bank lawyer is part of my network. The district attorney, I would say, is part of my network. So I guess to end the story, this is my street that I am very proud that this surface was as a result of my petition. These streetlights are part of my petition. This is my sign. There's my logo. My logo. This is my institute up here on the 3rd floor. This is a 6-apartment building. I'm still the owner of that one apartment. And my takeaway, to sum it up all at the end, reach out to people believing they can teach you something. Leveraging the power of your own assets, because you do have them, no matter where you're from. Your culture has good things that you can leverage. And build trust-based networks across all the sectors that you have anything to do with. So, thank you very much. So, any questions, comments? Want to throw some tomatoes at me? Questions about absolutely anything on the planet Earth? Yes?
Just to know, you did all these are very good points, anywhere when you start something new, to use the environment and facility. How about the consulate? You didn't contact the embassy or consulate before you started doing all these things? They didn't help you?
Did I contact my consulate? My American consulate? I don't think my American consulate would have had anything to share with me about these projects. Not really. I would contact the consulate for renewing passports for myself and my family, but they probably wouldn't help. There's a lot of Americans doing projects in South America, so I don't think they really have anything to share. Mark?
Bruce, you didn't mention one thing, and I'm curious about your thoughts. Not doing or saying much until you've had a good chance to observe how things are done where you are. Not just not asking questions, just watching and seeing what doesn't get done, how things get done, before you ask questions or open your mouth.
Very good point. Very good point. And I think it's absolutely true to observe, to see how the local people do them, because it varies from context to context. And of course, probably like many contexts, the Latin American contexts, the intuitive sense of trust between people is extremely important. And that's something you have to recognize and build and work on building. Good point.
I guess the other side of that is being seen as standoffish and not interested.
Of course, of course. Well, I think the thing is to engage, right? To engage with people, to have interaction, participate in the things that they participate in, help them with the things that they would like to do. Also, my house there, my very beautiful vacation home, I told the cops, anytime you guys want to come and stay, just let me know. It's for you free. I would never charge you anything. You can come. They never did. But it's an important gesture to say. And if they did want to take it for a week or two, I'd be happy to lend it to them. I have an American friend from Virginia who bought some hot springs in the same zone, Pucón. He's done very, very well. And he just has done the same thing as I have. Engage with the local people, be willing to do favors for them. And question? Yes?
Didn't you meet with any other Americans in Chile who had come to the Chile before you in order to get some information on the culture?
Of course. Before I went to Chile, I had friends who had, told me, great place, come on down. Also, in Chile, you see lots of foreign people, and they have all kinds of projects. Some of them do very well, some of them flop. You see all types. I mean, like you saw that book that I showed you, How to Survive in the Chilean Jungle. It's very common that Americans like to go to Chile. It's very similar to California in climate. It's almost identical. But it has the Latin culture. Wine is very cheap. Wine that would cost $50 a bottle would cost like 10 there. It has a lot of things that Americans tend to like. Yes?
Maybe I missed this, but what are some common misperceptions or stereotypes that Americans have of Latin America that they should throw out the window if they ever want?
One very common misunderstanding that I see of Americans, they say, oh, the Latins are dishonest. It's not so. It's a misunderstanding. I've heard that from, at least a dozen Americans. It's actually a misunderstanding. For example, in Latin culture, it's very common to say nice things to somebody just to show you're friendly. For example, oh, that's the most beautiful jacket I've ever seen. It's not really, but you're saying that to be nice. And in their culture, that's perfectly acceptable. It sounds like little lies, but it's not really little lies. It's just a way to say, I'm trying to be nice to you, and I like you. That's that's a big misunderstanding that I see with Americans who are trying to live there long term. For example, other misunderstandings that Americans have of the Chileans, I think Americans who are in South America for a long time, sometimes they feel frustrated because they try to have things done by rules and regulations and doing things because this is what the norm says. And they don't realize that sometimes you got to throw that out aside and you have to just reach out to people and build relationships and get things done via relationships and friendship and goodwill. Anecdote, I have a friend in Peru. He was kind of raised in USA. Are there any Peruvians here before I continue? In any case, he speaks Spanish very well. English very well. He's Peruvian. And he had a client who was a very wealthy British guy who brought he had this fancy yacht that he wanted to import to Peru. And he had to get a permit to get it in there. And so my friend, Francisco, he got him the interviews with all the people. And so there was a guy in the Navy, a very high official. And he said, okay, $10,000 for the yacht club, $10,000 for me, $10,000 for the permit, and you're all set. And the English guy said, that's a corruption, that's blah, 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 blah. I'm going to do it the right way. And so he was like a year trying to do the paperwork on his own. And finally, he had all the paperwork done, and guess who was the person who had to sign it last? That very same guy. And this same guy, he told my friend Francisco, he says, tell your friend to get the hell out of Peru. We're never going to give this to him. So the point is, if you offend people by judging them and saying, oh, this is corrupt, it's not the way to go. You can do it if you want, but you're not going to get what you want done. Okay, more questions, comments? Tomatoes? Yes?
Yeah. No, actually, it's very interesting how you mentioned the trust that you have to build, because it's true of Latin America. So, but between like Chile and all Argentina, Paraguay, where I'm from, Uruguay, all of them have like different cultures.
Yes.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
So, for example, for us, we know Chile is one of the most developed countries in Latin America, and the security of Section 8, it's pretty high, the standards are pretty high. But if you go to my country, all the things that you have done, like probably if you go to the cops will be involved in your robbery. It's not 100, but 90% like chance that they are involved in your robbery. And that's how it works because of the corruption from years to years that I won't bring that now. But the things that you do the work that you say that it's not. I mean, you can go for the rules, but there are no rules because every public institutions more likely to have like their own private steps. But the thing is, like how to bribe. It's like that's the way it works. It's like I hate it, but it's how it works. So you have to meet the right persons, but to do things, but otherwise you won't get anything.
My perception in countries like this, there's something that I've heard described as islands of power. There's different islands of power, which are often individual people. And to get things done, you have to reach out to these islands of power and build some sort of a rapport. And I think the best thing to do is to kind of forget the American style of following the rules and regulations, and you just have to reach out to the islands of power and do things a little bit on their terms. For example, Peru and Chile are absolutely different. I had friends tell me that when you do business in Peru, the first day you cannot talk about business. You just have to be friendly, have dinner, have a drink. You can't talk about business the first day, they'll be offended. Chile, it's okay. You can go to business the first day. But for example, these are cultural differences, and it's good to be aware of. But I think the key thing is to kind of let go of the legalistic Anglo-Saxon type mentality in the Latin context and realize that relationships are the thing you have to look at. Yes, Storytime?
You mentioned that when you got there, you decided that you didn't want to be the ugly American, and you read the book that helped you, right?
Yes. How to Survive in the Chilean Jungle.
Okay, so what are the things that you did to not be that ugly American? What steps do you take?
Okay, I'd say the main steps would be to reach out and try to absorb and learn and listen and see how their culture is. Learn to appreciate the culture. I mean, in my case, I was a single guy. I went to parties. I made very good friends, and I tried to, become as close as I could to them, and try to absorb some of the things that they do. I guess that would be one way to get out of the ugly American frame. Another thing would be to not judge, to not be judgmental, and not to use the USA standard for what I see as far as their ways of doing business or their ways of doing anything. It's a different country, a different universe. And to say, oh, you guys are bad because you're not doing it the American way, where the rules, everybody sticks to the rules, everybody's on time. It's not. It's a different world. So I guess that would be a good thing. And when you have genuine appreciation, when you like people, they like you. It's important that they feel appreciated and respected, and I think also that's a key thing to any foreign context that anybody could be in. And I realize here of you guys in front of me today, most of you guys are not Americans, but it's the same thing. I mean, a Japanese person may be working in Congo or in Turkey or in Russia. I think it's the same thing. Everybody has good cultural things that they take with them, and then being open to the local culture, learning from that local culture, you're far more effective. Yes?
So going sort of off of your point about, it's about relationships and that you might not be able to get things done in the sort of like step 1, step 2, step 3 that you might be expecting, that, you're going to have to talk to someone and kind of bypass those. I've had a lot of those same experiences in Latin America, so I definitely agree. And I'm wondering, in one sense that's very helpful, but in the other sense, if, someone else comes into that new context, it's, you're sort of starting from scratch every single time.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering if there's sort of some way to kind of understand that, these are alternative ways of getting things done, and that it does depend on you getting to know people and things, but if there's some way to kind of not have to start from scratch every single time and to kind of continue, it's much easier going into a place if you have sort of a plan of where you need to go and that it's not so haphazard. So I don't know.
Very good. Excellent. Very good question. I think pass the baton off slowly. For example, if you have a new person who's going to replace you, I think the ideal thing would be to introduce them to the people that you know in your network, people that are of trust, that are part of your network, and then they're going to have to try to start, building a relationship probably with those same institutions or with those same organizations. And oftentimes it's different people. For example, I get into the banks in Chile, and I know almost all of the top guys in the banks, but somebody introduced me to one person, and I didn't hit it off so well with that person. But with somebody else in the same bank, I hit it off even better. So I really got my foot deep into the door of the banks that way. So sometimes that happens too, but I think personal introductions, and to go to bat for your friend and say, hey, this is a really good person doing a really good thing, doing the same type of work I do. So, really try to work with them. I think, passing the baton off like that personally, taking the time to do it, I think that's the best way. Now, if you can't do that, at least give a name and, put your own recommendation on the line. Something I've observed in my experience in Latin America is people won't give their name and let you use their name unless they really trust you and know what you're going to do. So I usually ask somebody, I say, Hector, do you mind if I mention you to this other person I'm trying to reach? And he'll say yes or no. If he says yes, I can do it, but I'm not going to do it without asking first. To protect that relationship. Even in the case with the lawyers, for example, when I got the guy who was a specialist in trademark and patents, he, 5 of my friends know him. So if he knifes me in the back, lawyers are very dangerous people. I have a very negative opinion of them. But if he screws me, he's going to have 5 other people who know that. So he's not going to do it. Whereas if I just came from outer space and tried to hire him, I would be very vulnerable. Jeremy?
Is there ever an instance where you thought you changed some of the locals' perceptions of Western Anglo-Americans? And also, is there an example of where you were really close to giving up and saying this is not for me, and how did you overcome that?
Exactly. I guess I didn't tell you all my stories. At one time I was almost killed. I was held at gunpoint on the ground like this for 10 minutes. It was a horrible, horrible assault. At this point, I thought, I'm just, getting out here. That wasn't Chile. That was Colombia. And it was my own fault. I got myself into, a place where I shouldn't have gone. I almost quit after that. You can feel like a real macho guy, but when you realize, a gun, you can do nothing. You realize that you're just absolutely powerless. I was held for 10 minutes by somebody who would have not minded killing me. And he was just trying to get stuff wallet and stuff like that. We were a group, and the guys who robbed us were also a group. It was scary. I almost left after that. I thought, I can't take this anymore. But, I calmed down, and I realized, no, I still love this place. There's still good, things. And also, it was my fault. I was going into a dangerous place. Bogota has these, forested mountains right next to the city. Nobody goes there. Everybody knows you don't go there. And I was, stupid, and I went there anyway. But, I almost quit at that point. Now, have I changed the perception of some people about the Americans? Definitely. For example, the police guys in Pucón, where I have my house, the fact that I bought them the broken window for their car without question, the fact that I only took the stuff that was, my stuff and not any other stuff, I know that they see, oh, this is a decent guy. Americans, at least in Chile, sometimes have the reputation of being arrogant, as I said, culturally insensitive and somewhat isolated. Of course, the guys who prosper and do well are not like that, and that's why they end up prospering and doing well. More questions, more comments, more tomatoes. Well, I super appreciate you guys for coming. Thank you very much.